Hi, I'm Peter Brusso here on 101 Small Business Mastermind, and I have again with me Frank Syringa. Say good morning, Frank.
Good morning, Frank.
All right, let me kick off my block. Let me first a caveat or bracket my block by saying, I'm coming a little off course. I usually do all internet stuff, but this entrepreneurial stuff and connected to the internet has been really fascinating me. So last week we looked at some hydroponics. It was just a mind blower, and we're going to watch a little bit more. So without any further ado, and we're going to go full screen. Now this is an overall of the various hydroponic systems at the time, but it gives you a good breadth of understanding what it's all about. Now we're talking, look at that. Some strawberries. This is playing, I want everybody to think about, you produce something like this, people are making $50,000 to $100,000 a year growing in their homes and outside, and of course feeding themselves. And with hydroponics you can add the nutrients when the plant needs it the most. Very difficult to do that in soil, plus there's no pathogens in the nutrients, and if you grow indoors, you can grow year-round crops. For outdoors, you can only get maybe 1 or 2 or 3 growths, and that's it. Now, this is the most interesting one. This thing rotates. Matter of fact, I'll show you a little chunk. There's a home-grown system. Of the automated systems, they even have automated dispensers for the nutrients, so you don't even have to do that. Checks the pH, levels the pH of whatever crop you're growing, puts it in their best growth period, growth zone. Rooftop. Well, I'm not quite sure what that one is, but somebody got cute with that. Was that interesting or what?
It's just mind-blowing. My first thought, I was looking at that, was number one, it's very aesthetically attractive.
Right.
It's not like it's not hodgepodge. It looks like it was thought out and designed for the eye. Number two, I too went to, there's no more seasons. It's 12 months.
Right.
It's 12 months where you control the temperature and the sunlight, or the light, I guess, what we call sunlight.
Yeah, well, you now in that mode, we're going to watch something very interesting here in a minute. But in that mode, You can change the frequency spectrum of the light. You like red light, the plants apparently like red light to get foliage going, and they like blue light to fruit. So you can raise them in red light until you want them to fruit. They get big enough that you turn the blue light on, and they say, "Uh-oh, I gotta produce tomatoes," or if they're a fruiting type, tomatoes, peppers, things like that. Mm-hmm. So and then there's some evidence, and I'm building one right now in these new extreme white light LEDs, that there's spectrum pieces in there that we believe that the plants need for anti-pest, anti-other things, like sunlight. I mean, sunlight's not an accident. They were raised in sunlight, but here we're going to isolate the frequencies and say, oh yeah, that's it. But the bottom line is you can control literally all the environment and the stuff that the plants are getting. And if you're growing indoors, like I say, you get a bunch of crop, bunch of crops. So let's watch another one here. Now this I had never seen. I just saw it. So I thought this would be very interesting to share here. I'd never seen anything like this one coming up.
My name's Robert Hawson and I'm the vertical plant technician. An acre greenhouse and do 10 layers on top of it.
Due to the increase in population, which is going to hit 9 billion by 2050,
I've heard of this.
We're going to rely heavily on future technologies, and that's where hydroponics plays a massive part.
This
specific vertical farm can grow plants that you would normally grow on an acre and a half in the space of the room behind us.
First we sow them, and then they're placed in the propagation room, and after a few weeks they are placed on the hydroponic unit in the troughs, and after that, once they are fully grown, they are harvested.
We grow a wide variety of things. We focus mainly on herbs because that's what we use downstairs in the production kitchen. However, we have grown lettuce, we've grown chilies, we've grown peppers. We grow a lot of Chinese herbs for a local Chinese restaurant, so we grow the pak choi, the choy sum and the kai lin. We grow in a hydroponic conveyor belt. It does one revolution every half hour. We use that system to water the plants so that each plant can get the same amount of water, but also we use it so they can share the sunlight and get the same amount of sunlight.
So the plants are grown in a synthetic.
Almost always, the fresh fruits and vegetables that we find at the grocery store have been trucked or shipped in from somewhere else, especially if you live in a city like New York, like I do. And all this traveling affects the nutrients in them, meaning they're not as good for you as they should be, not to mention the impact it has on the environment. But there might be a solution right behind me in these shipping containers.
The way we get our food is completely messed up. In fact, on average, our produce travels 1,500 miles before getting to us.
This kale is certainly much healthier than having a bag of potato chips, but not all kale is created equal, so to speak. As soon as a vegetable or a fruit is picked, it starts deteriorating. There is a nutrient loss that is happening every day. So you're buying a bag of spinach that was grown in California and was picked and sitting in cold storage and then washed and dried and sitting in cold storage some more and then sent to a packer to put into those cellophane bags and sealed and then in cold storage again and then gone on a truck or a train and come across the United States and goes into a distribution center and sits some more, and each day there's this nutrient loss. Is it bad for you? It's not bad for you, but it doesn't have that like spinach benefit that you think you're getting, that you've conditioned yourself into believing that you're getting.
But there's one guy who thinks he has the solution. And he's Elon Musk's brother, Kimbal.
Eric, are you excited to meet him?
I'm stoked.
Hello. Nice to meet you. What do you think is wrong with the way Americans currently or in the past have gotten their food?
The two different paradigms in food today is industrial food, which is frankly food that doesn't taste very good. It's high calorie, low nutrients, and real food is a way to think about food that is better for you and tastes better. The opportunity we have, the challenge we have in front of us is real food for everyone. And technology now enables it to be delicious. It's certainly better tasting than food that's shipped across the country. And in a city like New York, almost everything is shipped across the country for most of the year. And so we came up with this idea to do indoor farming in the city. And we're doing it in Brooklyn, 10 farms, the same containers you see on the back of ships. We turn them into an indoor farm, the equivalent of a 2-acre outdoor farm in the heart of Brooklyn.
All right, now back to Brooklyn.
So it is the dead of winter, and I am in a parking lot in the middle of Brooklyn where there are currently 10 shipping containers that are growing a variety of produce. These guys aren't using any soil, and they're using as much water as we typically use in our daily showers, which is crazy to me. Let's take a look inside.
Hello. Hi. How are you?
Good. Well, so this is your farm.
This is my farm.
How many things are you growing in here?
We have arugula, radicchio, minutina, pak choy, kale, lettuces.
When you think about farming in the middle of a city, you've really got to think about resources in a very different way, right? The first resource you think about is space. So this farm is built inside a 320 square foot shipping container, but on an annual yield basis, you're able to get as much food as you would do from a 1 or a 2 acre outdoor farm. It's kind of crazy how much food you can grow in a very tiny footprint.
They also control the climate, so they can grow anything all year round.
Yeah, this is some of the new stuff I've seeded, which is pretty cool. In the middle, I have a lettuce mix, 6 different varieties. This climate allows me to grow multiple things, and I personally am just really excited to try a bunch of stuff. I have some strawberries and poppies at the front of the farm that are really cool. They're pretty adorable. They're just the leaves right now. I get really excited about it, but you know.
The next resource that you really think about is water usage. So in these systems, water drips down through the irrigation system. It's mixed with the right level of nutrients. Gravity does its thing and feeds the plant. And then the water is all captured in a tray at the bottom and is then recirculated. In fact, this whole farm runs on about 8 gallons of water a day, which is like less than your shower.
And that's 95% less water than an outdoor farm would use.
It's like you have an entire forest in here. I love it.
These look good.
This is like the first time in a while that I've been craving a salad.
It's got a little bit of like a zing at the end.
Yeah, good. Okay, cheers.
The other resource that we think about is electricity, right, and energy. So you'll notice these pink lights all over the farm. The reason for that is that actually the spectrum of light that the plant uses is the red and the blue spectrum. It doesn't need all of the other colors, right? And so what we do is we only push in the frequency of light that the plant needs to grow.
Despite this, energy use overall is still a problem. In fact, 50% of Square Root's costs go to electricity. This is an issue many indoor farms have run into, and some have had to close because of it.
All of these projects are important, but in order to do it, they need to heat, they need to have lights, and so there's so much energy costs to grow locally. So a small scale one is never going to be able to be sustainable economically.
And so is this the most energy efficient that it could be, or is there kind of room for improvement?
Oh, there's so much room for improvement. We are at the very, very early beginning stages of this whole industry, right? I would love to figure out how we put solar on the roof of the farms, right? So we can take these farms completely off the grid. So literally every day, we're thinking about ways to make this more sustainable and more cost effective, quite frankly.
So what is the solution in a city like New York where so much of our produce is coming from quite far away?
I think that any project that engages with our food and the human connection with people understanding where their food comes from is great. But it's still not a solution to be able to feed a city of 8+ million people. Even if it's heavily funded, even if the price drops, it's still one solution, but not the only solution.
To be honest, what this has made me realize is that I think I really do want to go into farming. Given the growing population and densification of cities, like, we don't really have a choice. We can't just not grow enough food for the people that are living here. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that this is definitely part of the future of food.
Mind
Frank,
blowing.
what do you think? What do you think?
Mind blowing. It's like it's again. I got my first picture I got in my mind was Wilbur and Orville on Kitty Hawk, and that morning saying, "I have no idea what we're going to do with this, you know. But let's see if we can stay up in the air for 10 seconds before we fall again." And that's where I think we are. And well, obviously we're more ahead than that, but in terms of the scale, good luck Iowa and Nebraska.
Yeah. Of course, they could go vertical farming indoors too.
Yeah.
So I mean,
yeah, they could.
The second country in the world for production of vegetables and lettuce is Holland.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, they've converted everything to greenhouses, and they're
but they're still doing tulips, I hope.
Oh yeah, but
okay.
No, sure. I don't think that you can grow tulips inside too.
Right.
Around, you know, but. It just goes to show you this is an emerging technology and where it can be coupled. And cannabis growing certainly is one sliver of revenue stream for a lot of people. There can be, you know, but the traditional stuff of lettuces and tomatoes and all that stuff, priceless. And I think, I don't know how old that video was on their electric stuff. Most of their electricity would have to be going for air conditioning. That's it. Those the LED lights are almost next to nothing. I've got, what do I got? 7, 13, 15 LED systems running in my house right now. And I calculated the energy. I measured it, calculated the energy for a year is $18.82. I had 11.
But for Square Roots in Brooklyn, at least 5 months of the year, they got to heat those trailers too.
Right. And of course, I get that for free here because I'm heating and cooling my house. You know, so I guess I could factor a piece of that in there. But basically, it still pays off. You got to heat and cool yourself anyway. So, you know.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
Interesting.
Entrepreneurs. Let's see what we got here.
I love that sound. It's time for our feature, Why They Make Millions and You Don't. And today I'm going to talk about a gentleman that you may have heard his name in the last few minutes. His name is Kimbal Musk. Why Kimbal Musk makes millions and you don't. Kimbal, we saw Kimbal here in the end, but Kimbal didn't start out that way. Let me tell you how Kimbal got to Square Roots. It wasn't a straight line. So let's talk about Kimbal Musk. And if the Musk name sounds familiar, it should, because Kimbal has an older brother named Elon, who almost everybody knows. Kimbal was born in 1972 in Pretoria, South Africa. He has a brother named Elon, which we mentioned, of Tesla and SpaceX fame, and a sister named Tosca, T-O-S-C-A, an award-winning filmmaker. Kimbal's mother, May, divorced Kimbal's father when Kimbal was 9 years old. So he was raised by his mom. May, his mother, with 2 Masters of Science degrees, she worked full-time as a dietitian and part-time as a model because she had to pay the bills. So Kimbal, watching what his mother went through, learned the following life lessons from his mother. Number 1, you have to work hard. There's no free stuff. His mother had to work hard. Number 2, you increase your luck when you increase your work. There's a direct relationship there. The more you work, the luckier you get. Number 3, and this was personal to Kimbal, the more responsible you are for yourself, the easier it is for your mother. She has so many other worries. Do as many things as you can. Don't burden your mom, okay? And the fact that Kimbal and Elon and Tosca did not get any allowance from May, the mother, they spent their free time, because they were alone a lot, because she was always working, trying to come up with ways to make a buck. So Kimbal, Elon, Tosca, and a few cousins, they became early entrepreneurs. Let me give you an example. In their neighborhood in Pretoria, chocolate Easter eggs sold for R1 a piece. That's the South African equivalent of their dollar. But the cost of chocolate was virtually nothing. So they said, oh, there's an opportunity here. So the kids, they bought chocolate and they melted it. They melted it and then they molded it into a shape of an Easter egg. Okay? And they wrapped their new chocolate eggs in foil. And then they went door to door in the posh areas of Pretoria, selling their Easter eggs, not for R1 each, because that's what the guys were doing. They charged 10 rands each, 10 times. And then they said, whoa, this price is way too high. But it was their response. You know, when you buy our chocolate eggs, you are supporting local capitalists. And the neighbors said that was so cute, they sold out all their eggs. Early entrepreneurs, don't cut the price, raise the price. Interesting. And May also had another rule that her kids had to follow. She said, before you start something new, make sure you want to. Because once you start, you must complete it to the end. No quitting allowed. She didn't want quitters. She wanted her kids to pick what they wanted to do and then be dedicated to the end. Well, these lessons must have been valuable because each child, Kimbal, Elon, and Tosca, have achieved notable levels of success. After high school, Kimbal moved to Canada from Pretoria to Ottawa, Ontario, and to be with his brother Elon, because Elon was already there. And Kimbal attended Queen's University in Ontario. And while he was still in college, Kimbal got an internship at Scotiabank, a pretty large bank in Canada. Because since he was a child, Kimbal knew he wanted to work in finance. That was his dream. But after a short stint at Scotiabank, Kimbal says, man, this is the worst thing I could have ever done. He says, I don't like this, and I don't want to do this the rest of my life. Kimbal had not yet found his passion. But in 1995, Kimbal started his first two businesses. A residential painting business called College Pro Painters, obviously in college. And he and his brother Elon started a company they called Zip, with the number 2, Zip 2. It was an online city guide to the cities in Canada. 4 years later, Compaq bought Zip 2 for $307 million. Kimbal took his earnings, his portion of the earnings, and he invested in software and technology company. He now became a VC at 25 years old, or 27, I guess it was. And one company that Kimbal invested in was his brother's idea. His brother had a company that he called X.com, which later became PayPal. In 2002, 3 years later, eBay acquired PayPal for $1.2 billion. Boom, boom. After all this success and money, most people would retire and live the good life, but not Kimbal, because he didn't know what he wanted to do. Isn't that amazing? He hadn't discovered his passion. But then he did. He says, I have a passion for food, and we'll see how this evolved. When he was asked recently in an interview where this passion for food came from, Kim said, food was something that I grew up with. Okay, so did everybody else, Kimbal. He said, but I was cooking from the age of 12. I love to cook. It was the gift I would give to my family. It was a way of getting my family to sit still, as he put it. When I cooked, we'd all sit down and we'd talk. That's why I like food. So Kimbal had a proven track record in tech, but his passion was food. So Kimbal says, I'm going to move to New York City, and I'm going to go to a cooking school to learn how to cook. So in 2000, Kimbal attended the French Culinary School in New York. Okay. So he's living in New York City. Shortly after graduating from French Culinary School, Kimbal was living near the World Trade Centers. And on 9/11, he woke up to the sounds of the planes hitting the buildings. He calls it the most incredible experience of his life. He looked out his window and he saw the towers falling. Then Kimbal, having graduated from culinary school, they asked him if he would like to volunteer to help. So Kimbal volunteered to cook for the firefighters and provide them with nourishing food every day for 6 weeks. He was amazed at how these firefighters would come in from looking for survivors in giant piles of melting metal. He said, and as he fed them, he noticed that they would connect with each other over food. They would get away from that melting metal and looking for bodies, live or dead, and they would just be enjoying the food and having a connection. And then they would go back to the giant piles of melting metal trying to save lives. That experience touched him deeply, and he says, I'm going to open up a restaurant because I want to bring communities together. So he searched, and in 2004, Kimbal opened his first restaurant called The Kitchen in Boulder, Colorado, a food town as we know. And it was a community bistro where foods would come from local farmers. He was already attaching himself to the local farmers, fresh food.
I'm standing in the middle of a farm in Colorado. And there's a bit of a food revolution going on here. Its leader, Kimbal Musk. Now, unless you're living under a rock, you probably have heard of his brother Elon. He wants to colonize Mars and upend industries from energy to transportation. Now, his brother Kimbal wants to have the same kind of influence, only he wants to change what winds up on your plate.
I was 25 years old and I sold a company for $300 million, and it changes your life in a way that well, okay, now I'm done. Okay, I've checked all the boxes, now what?
Kimbal Musk, along with his brother Elon, made a fortune during the heady days of the 1990s tech boom. 20 years later, both Musks are trying to solve the world's biggest problems.
I think food right now feels like 1995 in the internet days. The amount of innovation and excitement and enthusiasm is unbridled.
He calls it the kitchen community, a solution to food problems in poor neighborhoods across the country.
Nothing is bigger scale than food. I mean, every single human on the planet has to eat food. There has to be a way to scale it, and I just got to go figure it out.
It works like this. With his partner, Hugo Matheson, Musk opens high-end restaurants called The Kitchen in urban areas, using suppliers that meet higher than average standards.
The fish we buy through, some of it comes through Deer Island, Maine, rather than just sort of clicking on a magazine or a catalogue.
How do other restaurants do business then?
I would say ours certainly isn't the cheapest and certainly isn't the easiest path, but at the end of the day, you go to bed feeling like you've done the right thing.
The next part of the solution, a percentage of the restaurant's profits go to local schools for programs called learning gardens that teach kids about healthy eating.
If the average child starts eating salad at 13, can we get them to eat it at 12? We're not trying to move mountains, with a 5-year-old, but if you start when they're 5 years old, you can make a change in their entire life.
Kimbal's master plan? Transform 100 communities in the next 50 years.
We'll get people eating in our restaurants food that is real food, that really nourishes them, nourishes the farmer, nourishes the planet, nourishes the community. The U.S., I believe, exports its culture around the world. So if we fix it in the U.S., then it will, by its very nature, just flow out to the rest of the world.
Musk's fascination with food started in South Africa, where he grew up cooking for family and friends. As a 12-year-old, did you ever mess up really badly in the kitchen?
Oh my God. There was a funny time we got obsessed with French fries, as every 12-year-old should get. And I cooked it with the oil too low in heat. Me and my friend were ill, literally, for at least 24 hours.
But Musk's food revolution remained a childhood fantasy until a snow tubing accident in 2010 nearly took his life.
Broke my neck, paralyzed my left for, horizontal for 2 months, and lots of time to think about food and what I wanted to do. But it was the accident that basically was like, okay, now is your chance.
In the early days, it was really, there was just design and knife slinging in the kitchen. It was
Hopefully not at Kimbal.
No. Well, I call it gunslinging. Yeah, we were just cooking, and it was the early days of a business. It was probably like a startup in a garage or any small business starting out.
After opening 8 restaurants and 200 learning gardens together, the two are taking on their most ambitious project yet, in Memphis, the most obese city in America. As you expand into other markets that you're less familiar with, does failure ever enter into the equation?
Sure, I'm an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs live with fear of failure every single day. There's never an assumption of success. Are we part of the movement? Are we leading the movement? Are we making change? That's interesting. And the failure happens if you can't do that.
There were no booths in his restaurant, only community tables so people could connect, just like the firefighters did. Now, a lot of people says, Kimbal, you're nuts. Not everybody agreed with the community table concept. So Kimbal was asked, well, how do you handle criticism about your project, like the kitchen? He said, you know, the toughest critics you have to face as an entrepreneur is self-criticism. He says, criticism from all the outsiders, he said, that's easy to handle. Once you have started, stay true to your passion and persist through hard times. So Kimbal says, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. So he's doing well in the kitchen in Boulder, Colorado. Then in 2010, Kimbal was at a ski resort from vacation, I assume in the Colorado area. He had this great idea. I'm going to sit on an inner tube and I'm going to ski downhill. He now calls that a really dumb idea. He flipped, had an accident, and he landed on his head and hit something going 35 miles an hour. Kimbal was paralyzed for 3 days. Terrifying experience. But in those 3 days, he had to think about what he was going to do with the rest of his life. He's now 38 years old. Kimbal's reflection during this accident changed his life. Here's what he realized. He says, you know what? I've got friends. I've obviously got financial success because of what he did with Zip2 and also the PayPal. I know how to start and run a business. He was doing it with the kitchen in Boulder, Colorado. But he still wasn't doing what he was really passionate about. He was evolving over time. Yes, he had the kitchen, restaurant, but he wasn't running this restaurant as a scalable business, which he learned in a Silicon Valley tech role. So he decided to apply his passion, which was food, to his purpose, which he decided was to create a scalable business that provides delicious, nutritious food at reasonable prices. Once he put these two together, he was locked in. He had no choice. He had to combine his passion with his purpose. So he decided to create a restaurant concept that is scalable, that continues to work with local farmers, but in a way that is affordable. And he also wanted to be able to hire 18-year-olds, as he called them, that can be trained to cook simple, delicious food from American farmers. He didn't want to spend a lot of money on chefs. He wanted kids who could run this restaurant. So Kimbal decided to open a new restaurant. In fact, right next to the kitchen, you know what he called it? Next Door. Duh. So in 2011, right next to the kitchen, he opened up a restaurant called Next Door. It's called an urban casual American eatery. Affordable farm-to-table dishes, which is what his purpose was, his passion. And most dishes cost $10. Very affordable. But now he brought his tech experience in. In this Next Door restaurant and all the others that followed, he installed high-tech ovens that can be programmed to automatically prepare food in complicated ways. These ovens can be performed to bake, steam, or roast. And after a software engineer sits down with a 2-star Michelin chef, and once the food is prepped, an 18-year-old, let's go back to his message, can run these ovens to create food of the quality of a 2-star Michelin chef. Local farmers, delicious food, high-tech ovens, technology galore, the most high-tech in the business. 18-year-olds can create the quality of food. He's getting there, but he's still not there. Next, he turned his focus to helping children have healthy connection with food, with the food that they eat. He says 40% of kids who went to high school are obese because they don't know about food. So he started a nonprofit he called Learning Gardens that builds gardens as outdoor classrooms and schoolyards. Kids plant, they tend, they pick, and they eat the crops from their personal gardens. The mission is to teach kids to have a real relationship with real food that tastes real good. He wasn't done. He was evolving. Next, he wanted to revolutionize farming. So he started a business called Square Roots, ta-da, which we just saw, which brings farms closer to his restaurants, farm to table. Avoid the institutionalized, avoid the 3,000 miles across, losing all the nutrients like that lady said. Square Roots is an urban farming accelerator in Brooklyn, New York, which we just saw in your video. They turn shipping containers into vertical urban farms that fit 2 acres of outdoor growing space into a 320-foot container.
Square Roots is an urban farming accelerator based out of Bed-Stuy. Currently, there are 10 entrepreneurs working to manage 10 shipping containers that are retrofitted with vertical farming technology, hydroponics, which is one of the easiest ways to reduce water usage and work very efficiently with materials in difficult spaces in urban areas. The mission of Square Roots is to train the next generation of farmers who are probably going to be working in a landscape growing food for people in an increasingly urban setting. More and more people are moving to cities and also demanding healthy, fresh food. So the combination of those two things creates a really interesting niche for food entrepreneurs.
You know, when you're growing fresh produce in the heart of the city and bringing that to people, that's a much more sustainable way of feeding people and a much more personal experience to kind of interact with your food and know your farmer, know where your food comes from. We can create almost 40 pounds of food a week and upwards of 60 pounds depending on the variety, and we use only 10 gallons of water a day, which is pretty incredible. So the system is actually quite simple, yet complicated at the same time. But we recycle the water in a loop, and we have it in the main tank in the back over there. And it comes up through the farm and drips down through all the towers, which allows the plants to grow.
The Square Roots farms have all kinds of fans and monitors inside the farm to keep it at a regular temperature, to cycle the air constantly through the leaves so there's no mold, to take humidity out of the air and put it back into the tank after it's run through a filter. So it's kind of an automated kind of robot. An important thing to consider if you're growing food in an urban setting is space. I mean, it's expensive to have any square footage in the city, so we want to make use of as much square footage as possible. Basically, you'll plant seeds in a tray, keep them in a seedling area until they're big enough to move into the towers, which is essentially like the farm. Like if you think of the rows you would see in a field where all of the greens are growing, that's what that is, except they're all vertical. So we pick plants that don't weigh too much necessarily, that they can maintain a kind of lift and not just get too heavy for themselves and start to grow down, as you might think of like bigger vegetable plants. So the lighting actually supplies most of the heat as well as the light for photosynthesis for the plants. We use LED strips that hang that have 2 colors of light. There are some very, just off the bat, really wonderful benefits of growing so locally is that you don't have to worry about shipping your food. You're not planning to. You're going to cut it and then bring it immediately to who's eating it.
I was just at BetaWorks Studio in the meatpacking district in Manhattan, and I just had harvested this morning some produce for their employees there and brought it right to them. with our Farm to Local program.
I bring greens to a restaurant on the East End. I'll harvest immediately before bringing the greens to them. The greens will last about 3 weeks in the fridge. No one's used to that. If you're getting your greens from California, which you probably are, they'll melt if you open the box within like 2 days. The greens are so crisp and have such flavor that you don't even need dressing. So oftentimes people will just eat them out right out of the bag like a bag of chips. I love the community of farmers. It's just been so interesting and inspiring to see how each person has developed the concept of their business, which it doesn't feel like there's competition necessarily between who our markets are, because we're all approaching different markets in a different way. The possibilities of innovation and finding those niches just seem so endless, which is really great.
The industrial food system is designed to withstand travel. They are usually high in calories, low in nutrition, low in good taste, and fundamentally, they're geared for shelf life more than they are for taste. The closer the food source, the better the taste and more nutritious the food. Let me give you an example of the power of these hydroponic farming shipping containers. I did not know this, but every year, the crops of basil that are reaped are graded as detailed as the crops of grapes for the finest wines. I did not know that. And a few years ago, due to the exceptional weather in a small town in Italy, this town grew the finest basil the world had seen in decades because everything just meshed. A software engineer, square root software engineer, studied the climate that year in that small Italian town. The temperature, the rainfall, the sunrise, the sundown, the humidity, and the pH level of the soil. The engineer came back to a square roots hydroponic farm and duplicated the weather for his new crop of basil. The result, he now sells the finest, highest premium basil in the world out of a shipping container in Brooklyn. Think about the possibilities. With square roots, a farmer with their delicious, nutritious food is never too far away from a restaurant, no matter where the restaurant is located. Kimbal does not have the notoriety of his brother, or the amount of notoriety that I believe he deserves. And in March of last year, 2017, Kimbal Musk won the following awards. He was named one of the most creative people in business by Fast Company magazine. In that same month of last year in March, he was picked as Social Entrepreneur of the Year by the Schwab Foundation. Not bad for a billionaire who fell in love with food at the age of 12. Kimbal Musk. So there's so much to gather from Kimbal. And he's charming, and he's a great interview. As you saw in that farm, even he was interviewed in Davos recently at the World Economic Forum. He has cowboy hat. He had his cowboy hat on. And anyway, so he's real. And I said, okay, what are the 3 small business lessons that I got from researching Kimbal Musk? And they were by the way, at least 24. Here's the top 3 I picked. Number 1, be dedicated. As a child, remember what Kimbal's mother taught him? Carefully choose what you start. When you start, give it your all. And oh, by the way, you ain't going to quit. We don't do quitters. Kimbal followed these rules in his high-tech businesses, and he followed these rules in his food businesses. Question for small business owners. If you knew that you could not quit, what new thing would you help you, what new thing that would help you grow your business are you willing to start doing? Why haven't you? Number 2, true personal fulfillment comes when you follow your own passion. As successful as Kimbal was in a high-tech world, he became a billionaire. Kimbal was not satisfied until he discovered and followed his passion. Food and scalable restaurants, real food for real people at real prices. Questions. What are you passionate about? Is this an integral part of your business? If not, why not? Lesson number 3, challenge beliefs. People didn't believe you could open a farm-to-table restaurant in the heart of the inner city. There were no farms around there. People didn't believe you could build gardens and schoolyards to teach kids about school. People didn't believe that an 18-year-old could create dishes the quality of a 2-star Michelin chef. People didn't believe that a 320 square foot shipping container could grow crops equal to a 2-acre farm. Kimbal Musk did all 4 of these things and more. Question, what belief should you challenge to grow your business? And if you haven't challenged it yet, why not? And that's my Why Kimbal Makes Millions and You Don't story for this week.
That's great. And in all honesty, I did not know you were going to do Kimbal Musk, okay? But this is like weird, but, you know, here we are, you know. You know, and I think some of the takeaways too, you know, this food industry thing has just really captured my imagination, you know.
Let me quote, if I may. Here's what Kimbal said, and I didn't work it into my story here. And, you know, and again, Kimbal is not a slouch. We know who he is. He said, food is the new internet. Food is he says, we are just touching the surface of what we can do, just like we're doing with the internet, of what we can do with food. Did it change, you know, before we had to drive to meet someone, now we have Skype. Before we had to have a hard copy book, now we can read it. Before, yeah, this, right, it's amazing what we do today.
And we have 3D printing. Yeah, 3D printing.
That's right. And so Kimbal says, food is the new internet. We're just beginning to scratch the surface. So anyway, so I'm sorry, go ahead, continue.
And, you know, I think along with that too, you know, I've been now on my diet, which I can't say is a diet anymore. It's like a regime. I don't know the right word to call it, but I'm 13 months now. And it's changed the way that I eat, clearly. That changes how much I eat. And my stuff is all homemade and all, yeah, I know where it comes from, you know, to a large extent. And it's pretty crazy, but yeah, I think he's right. And there's another dynamics to all of that too. And I did read that they did recreate the basil thing, but let's talk about that. The plant tissue culture world, they could grab that one, a cell from that basil that's so awesome and recreate it in agar, however many copies you want to make, the exact plant.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of these little bitty components that are starting to come together in some ways. And like I say, I see some people doing some of them and other people's doing the other parts and this and that. And, you know, they're not researching it like we are right now. And I researched to just start building these things. I didn't know anything about hydroponics until I started watching YouTube and then reading and researching and building simple ones and then learning all about that. I learned some more yesterday or last night, how to make my own anti-fungus and anti-mold spray for indoor plants. I made some this morning out of household stuff. Crazy.
You know, I know when we're teaching, or when I was teaching, I guess, we talked about the phases of because we're in the U.S., United States. When we first started, we were agricultural economy. And then we became the industrial economy. And then we became the high-tech economy. We may be going back to the agricultural economy again, aren't we? We could be going back there. Yep. We could be going back there because we're combining agriculture, industry, and high-tech.
I saw an automatic apple picking machine that moves. It's all automated. It goes to the tree, finds the apples, goes up, picks it, puts it in the right bin, and it's just doing its thing. You know, pretty soon, wouldn't it be crazy to be driving down the highway out here where all these big farms are, and all of a sudden you start seeing them create like the farm bot approach, you know, where there's a farm, the farm bot running up and down one row, each row, you know, tending and watering and weeding, you know, just outside, just even that improvement alone would be amazing, you know, just amazing.
I love the 12 months a year because the further, you know, I've lived in New England, and you know, and we have local farms, obviously. Yeah, but obviously you're limited to the summer and fall, sometimes the spring. But in the winter, you know, the farmers just, they hibernate. Hope they made enough money to last until they pick the next crop. This really changes the paradigms. It is a paradigm shift, and you're not lessening the quality. You're improving the quality of the food because you don't have the pesticides or the chemicals or the you know, I mean, the boll weevils are going to have a hard time now in the South with the cotton. It's I hope I live long enough to see this go quite far. It's going to go quite far. It's
you can even imagine hospitals having an interior indoor garden for their kitchens on the top roof of every hospital. And think about just the ability for, I mean, you know, at the hospital you have nutritionists, you have all these high-tech people that really could help, you know, integrate into a farm and produce just the right stuff for the right people and with the right diseases. And
the home I own right now here in the valley, unbeknownst to the builder, and it was built like 20 years ago, I guess 18 years ago. I have a space in my room that is perfect for hydroponic farming, even though it was designed for that. I have a 2-car garage. The minute we get autonomous cars, why the heck would I want a car? I'll just go on my app, get a car, and take me someplace. I can turn my garage into a producing piece of property that I can produce my vegetables, all the vegetables I want.
Yep.
Right next door. Right, and obviously we got the claims. I don't have to worry about the winter, but this is those who get in early are going to reap. Speaking about reaping your work, those who get in early and are going to reap the benefits.
Yeah, I have to caveat that though. You can get in early on the wrong technology.
Many did.
Mm-hmm.
Many did. Many did. So.
All right, Frank. What do you think? We'll call it a day.
Call it a day.
All right. Say good night, Frank.
Good night, Frank.